Lesson 8.2, Multiplying and Factoring. The objective of this lesson is to multiply a monomial by a polynomial and to factor a monomial from a polynomial. No vocabulary for this section, so you can immediately write this down in your notes. Essential understanding. Multiplying a monomial by a polynomial. You can use the distributive property to multiply a monomial by a polynomial. For example, 2x times 3x plus 1. If you use the distributive property, you're going to multiply 2x times 3x and 2x times 1. So 2x times 3x plus 2x times 1. 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times 1 is 2x, so 6x squared plus 2x. Problem 1. What is the simpler form of negative x cubed times 9x to the fourth minus 2x cubed plus 7? So if you use the distributive property, you can think of this as negative x cubed times 9x to the fourth, the first term, x cubed times negative 2x cubed, that's the second term, and negative x cubed times 7. Remember, when you're multiplying, you multiply the coefficients, you add the exponents. So negative 1, that's the coefficient here. Negative 1 times 9 is negative 9x to the 3 plus 4 power. Plus, because negative times a negative is a positive, 1 times 2 is 2, x to the 3 plus 3 power, and then negative 1 times 7 is negative 7x cubed. So then you just simplify, negative 9x to the 7th plus 2x to the 6th minus 7x cubed. Finding the greatest common factor. Factoring a polynomial reverses the multiplication process. When factoring a monomial from a polynomial, the first step is to find the greatest common factor, or GCF, of the polynomial's terms. Problem 2. What is the GCF of the terms 5x cubed plus 25x squared plus 45x? To help you out with this, you want to list the prime factors of each term. Identify the factors common to all terms. Now, in this video, we're going to show you the kind of the long way of finding the GCF of the terms. But once you get to doing these problems over and over and over again, you're going to be able to depict the GCF simpler than writing out all the prime factors. So the first term is 5x cubed. That simplifies to 5 times x times x times x. Do that for 25x squared and 45x, and you see that they have 5 in common and 1x in common. So the GCF of this polynomial is simply 5x. Factoring out a monomial. Once you find the GCF of a polynomial's terms, you can factor it out of the polynomial. Problem 3. What is the factored form of 4x to the 5th minus 24x cubed plus 8x? Step 1. Think. To factor the polynomial, you first have to factor each term. So you have to find the First, you have to factor each term, list the prime factors, and then you have to find the GCF. So 4x to the 5th is 2 times 2 times x times x times x times x times x. 24x cubed, it's 8 times 3, but 8 can be broken down as 2 times 2 times 2. And then 8x is simply 2 times 2 times 2 times x. So you see that they have 2 twice in there, so that's 4x. So the GCF is 4x. Once you find the GCF, you can factor it out. So you put it on the outside, factor out the GCF from each term, then factor it out of the polynomial. So you take it out of every term. It's kind of like dividing it by every term. So you have to think, if I take 4x out of 4x to the 5th, what's left over? X to the 4th, because if I multiply these two, I would get 4x to the 5th. Plus 4x, because 4x is positive. 24 divided by 4 is negative 6, and then x squared plus 4x times 2. So the simplified version, when we factor this trinomial, is 4x times x to the 4th minus 6x squared plus 2. Now, you can always check to see if you factored it out correctly by simply distributing to see if you get your original trinomial. Okay, so let's do some sample problems. Number 1, what is the simpler form of 5n times 3n cubed minus n squared plus 8? So if we distribute, we're going to multiply the coefficients and we're going to add the exponents. So 5 times 3 is 15. N to the first power times n to the third power is n to the fourth, because 1 plus 3 is 4. 5 times, there's a negative 1 out here, is negative 5. N to the first times n squared is n cubed. And 5n times positive 8 is simply plus 40n. Okay? That's using the distributive. That's multiplying a monomial with a polynomial. Number 2, what is the GCF of 3x to the 4th minus 9x squared minus 12x? Now here's where I want you to think, okay? You're going to first look at the 3 coefficients. The 3 coefficients are 3, 9, and 12. Don't worry about the minus signs. The smallest number here is 3. Think in your mind, is 3 also a factor of 9 and a factor of 12? If your answer is yes, then 3 is your GCF of the coefficients. If your answer is no, you have to do a little bit more work. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow when we see further examples. In this case, 3 is a factor of 9 and 3 is a factor of 12, so 3 is part of our GCF. That's the coefficients. Then you look at the variables and the exponents. We have x to the 4th, x squared, and x. You pick the lowest exponent. So I see 4, 2, and 1. So my GCF is simply 3x. And number 3, what is the factored form of 9x to the 6th plus 15x to the 4th plus 12x squared? So again, let's first find out the GCF. Well, sometimes it's easy to just look at the lowest exponent of the variables. We see x to the 6th, x to the 4th, and x squared. So I know that the GCF is going to have x squared in it because 2 is the smallest exponent. Now I look at 9, 15, and 12. So 9 is the smallest number. However, it's not a factor of 15 and 12. So look at the smallest number. What are the factors of 9? We have 1 and 9, but we already ruled those out. And the other factor is 3 and 3. So, is 3 a factor of 15? Yes. Is 3 a factor of 12? Yes. So 3x squared is the GCF. So now we're going to take this 3x squared and we're going to divide it by every single term. And then we're going to stick it on the outside of parentheses because remember, we're factoring. So we're going to write 3x squared. And if we look at the first term, not divide, just like we multiply, divide the coefficients. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. And instead of adding the exponents, we're going to subtract them. 6 minus 2 is 4. Plus 15 divided by 3 is 5. And 4 minus 2 is 2. So 5x squared. And I know the x squareds are going to go away here. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And again, I know this is the first time that you're seeing this. It may seem a little confusing. The factoring part can be a little confusing. But as far as the multiplying, like we did in number 1, it's just a distributive property when we're multiplying a monomial by a polynomial. Finding the GCF, if you're able to find GCF of numbers and variables, you just put it all together. And then when you're factoring a monomial out of a trinomial is when you just have to do a little bit of division, but it's the same rules as multiplication, just instead of adding your exponents, you're going to subtract them. And again, you can always check that this is correct by working backwards, by multiplying, distributing, and you should get your original polynomial.